is in progress. I'd like to welcome everyone to the this month's masterclass brought to you by Vdriven. My name's Wade Yenny. I'm the Vice President of Brand Management and Business Development for the company. And I'm joined today by two individuals from Fruition, which is a company that specializes in brand and package design, experts in that field. We're joined by Casey Harshman, who is the owner and brand director for Fruition, as well as Sarah Olney, who is the Director of Strategy for Fruition. And we're going to be talking today about building your brand from a strong foundation. Just want to, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, V-Driven Consulting brings you these master classes typically once a month. We email the information out on our newsletter and via our community. And if you're not signed up for that, we'll have the link in the chat for you to do so. Encourage you to sign up because there's just a wealth of information we share with you on a regular basis. Certainly, we also post it on LinkedIn and things as well. So I'm not going to bore you with too many details from me. We're going to get right into the meat of today's presentation, and I want to welcome you, Casey, to today's masterclass. And thank you for joining us. Good to have you here.
Thanks, Wade. Appreciate it. We're very excited to be here. And also thank you, Sasha and Luke, for the opportunity. So welcome, everybody. We are Fruition. I'm Casey Harshman, owner, director of Fruition, and Sarah Olney, as Wade said, director of strategy. So this, I believe, is the 11th year of Fruition, my 21st year in the CPG space in general, of helping founders and brands really understand themselves as a brand, and then driving that through identity and package design. So we really specialize in building strong, smart CPG brands from the ground up. So today we don't want this to be too much about us, but we have to tell you about us so that you have an opportunity to maybe learn or understand how you can go through this process, whether you are, if you're launching a brand and you don't have anything yet, or if you have a brand and velocities are slow, or just there's tension in the marketplace for you, and you're trying to figure out how you might rehab or refresh your brand. This ideally we're gonna share with you the process that we follow in order to do that. So whenever we start with someone, we'll say to them that this is your brand, it's not our brand. And I think that's a really important place to begin, for you to really truly own your authentic story, because it's really yours at the end of the day. So the way we go about this is success is really the only option. Launching and growing and scaling a brand is very difficult. Many brands that we probably all could name go out of business. I think the stat is nearly 75% of brands fail within the first 2 years. I'm a very optimistic person. I don't want that to come off as too negative, but I think you deserve better as founders and brand owners, and the industry can do better overall in this regard. So from our experience, we've learned that the first step in building a brand is to truly build your brand, right? We know that some people, and maybe some of you on this call, you've launched your brand, you were doing whatever in life, and now you have a passion and you want to follow that passion, and you have the dollars that you have, and everyone will tell you how you should follow this process. So there's a tension point there of dollars that you have, and kind of marrying that with skilled experts to really truly help you build the brand. So we're excited to share this process with you, to help you fight for that consumer attention and ideally bring the vision of your brand to fruition.
And Casey, before we get to the next slide, I wanted to mention, I failed to, I put it in the chat, but I want to say it verbally for those listening now. We encourage you to enter your questions into the chat. Sarah and Casey are going to leave plenty of time at the end of the presentation to ask your questions. Those work best if they're interactive relative to your brand, and you have a chance now to interact with experts in the field. So please enter your questions in the chat. I'll be monitoring that, and then as we get through the presentation and have opportunity for the questions, I'll throw them out to Casey and Sarah, and we can go from there. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for saying that, Wade.
Yep.
Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is there's some density to this content. We're going to move quickly so that we can get to those questions at the end. Each one of these sections could be an hour-long presentation in and of itself. But to just give you this a fairly quick overview of all this, we start with brand discovery, and we'll contextualize all this as we go through. But this is a place where I like to honor my mom, who was a doctor of psychology, and she wrote a book. The book is called Learn Your Story, Find Your Power. So this is something that has great meaning to me in terms of how I think we help you all as brands and as founders do this work. And so we do this work by discovering everything that there is to discover about your brand. And it's really helping you uncover this true, authentic story of yourself. Once we've learned that story and you find it for yourself, we can then help you unlock the power of your brand through the rest of everything else. So that I got to give a little shout out to my beautiful mother there. Next, after that, we go into brand platform. And this is the foundation of everything. All future decisions that you make as a brand really should anchor towards this brand platform. Once we have the brand platform, something that we don't have in here would be naming, but naming would fall somewhere between brand platform and pathways. Ideally in this order, that even if you were going to be, Mike's Cupcakes, and you're Mike and you sell cupcakes and you know that that's the name, okay, well, we should pressure test that name once we do the discovery in the platform. Then we get into design or positioning pathways. That then really serves as the creative direction to work into brand identity. We then see brand identity as everything. And then we express that identity in terms of activating your brand, package design, website, email marketing, trade marketing, digital marketing, social media, Amazon, et cetera, the whole nine yards. It's very important that you consistently express your brand across all of those trade and consumer touch points so that consumers can find themselves in you. So now to dig a little deeper into each one of these sections, Sarah, please take it away.
Fantastic. Thanks, Casey. Thanks everybody for being here. So excited to share with you a little bit of a peek behind the curtain. I'll be sharing our process that we use at Fruition with you. I think all agencies maybe do it a little bit differently, but we wanted to just let you kind of understand our process here. We start with brand discovery. So this is really the opportunity where we get a really comprehensive, holistic view of not only just your brand and what's happening with you personally, but also any outside factors that could potentially influence your sales, your growth, your opportunities. So we start with a kickoff call, and it's usually a pretty in-depth conversation between the founder, the principals, any of the key decision makers in the brand, and then our core team at Fruition. And it's our opportunity to really kind of crawl inside your brain, and we ask all the questions. Typically, it's not something that folks need to prep for because they've lived this. They have all this information within their minds. So we really kind of dig deeply to understand that why. So why you started your company, what are the factors that came into whether this was your mom's recipe and you started it, or if you maybe had some kind of medical history and you found this wonderful product, or understanding the genesis of your brand and what those motivations are. We take a look at the target demo. So who's purchasing your product, the primary demo, but then we also look a little bit at, specialty groups that maybe we can make sure that, we tap into. Potentially there's opportunity there as well. We take a look at trends. So sometimes brands come to us and they have lots of research and they've done a lot of brand work. And then sometimes we have to go in there and actually do this qualitative and quantitative research, which is a really enlightening process for us. We look at trends from a macro level. So what's happening in the world? What influences might be affecting how consumers are making their choices? And then we also look at trends from more of a micro and a personal level. So let's say, you're an ice cream brand like Double Rainbow, is non-dairy trending, or what are people leaning toward out in the marketplace? And then we look at landscape as well. So we look at the retail landscape, D2C, we'll go into, club retailers. We will stand in front of the shelves and really digest it. We take lots of store shots. We spend lots of time in the grocery store evaluating what's that perspective that the consumer gets? How are they making their decision? What's popping on shelf? What's receding? Everything from substrate, right? Like glossy finishes to matte, to communication points to colors. And we really do a deep dive on what's happening from that visual perspective in the landscape. And then we keep narrowing that aperture and take a look at the specific competitors. So we look at how they're expressing themselves on pack. What are they saying? If is there a communication point that, we can use to differentiate ourselves from the competition? And then last but not least here, tension to thrive. We love the word tension. We think it's really healthy to be able to kind of dig deeply and figure out like, all right, where are those opportunities where we can stand out? We can be a little bit different from the competition. So that's what encompasses our brand discovery process. And from there, we get into what we call the brand platform. So this puts us in a really grounded place. Like once we've gone through that entire discovery process, we know who we are, we understand the tensions, we understand the marketplace, we have a really great kind of bird's eye view of things. And this gives us a great opportunity to now put us in a position where we can focus that attention back on us as a brand or you as a brand. So, when we think about these big established amazing brands out there, brands like Disney or Trader Joe's or Nike, they have a resonance. They mean something to us, right? They've done a really great job emotionally connecting with us. So they all offer a product and a service, but there's another layer that these brands have established with us. So in this way, these brands are almost like people in a way. They have characteristics. Everyone in this call could probably sit down and write, exactly what Disney means to them, and we'd probably all come up with similar qualities. And this doesn't happen by accident. As marketers, this is our superpower. This is our ability to help our audience really think about us in a way that we want them to. So we can help craft their perceptions. We can help them understand why they should trust us, what elements they need to, what we want them to believe in, and really start to kind of become a part of their lives. Because the best brands, we let them in, right? We wear their clothes, we eat their food, we even physically become, part of them when we adopt them into our lives. And that's ultimately the goal, because once you have that brand affinity and that brand love, you build loyalists out there. So what is this brand platform? It's a foundation piece. It's a physical document. Sometimes it's only 10 pages or so, but it's very robust and it's rich. And it's really that distillation of all of the things that we learned through that discovery process. So it contains things like your purpose, your mission, your vision, your core values and goals, your essence and your personality, that brand voice, so the tonality in your messaging, key attributes, the main things that we want to talk about and communicate to our consumer, and then ultimately your positioning as well. So it's really not something that we share with consumers. It typically maintains an internal document. Occasionally there are elements of the brand platform that might come to life, or words and phrases and things that are put out into the world to the consumer. But for the most part, it's the document that helps us define our differentiation. So how we can stand out, how we prove that we're different and better than the competition. Sometimes we work with brands and they have so many things to say. There's so many good things, so many great qualities and practices that they want to get out into the world. That brand platform helps us narrow down that messaging and be very deliberate about, once we get to, let's say, package design, what makes it to the front of pack versus what we offload to back of pack, or maybe that goes on the website or social. So helping us be deliberate and intentional about how we communicate with our consumer. And ultimately, we want the brand platform to be like a really clear, concise document that's super simple. It's easy to understand, and it allows that pathway so we connect with consumers.
Yeah.
If you,
Sorry, go ahead, sir.
Oh, I was just going to say a good agency too, as you create this brand platform, would work with you in a very collaborative fashion. Sometimes it takes rounds and rounds of revisions, but we want this to be, a true reflection of who you are.
Absolutely. And this would be something that would not be shared externally. This would be internal document, right? That is going to help. It's not only going to help drive decisions that you might need to make from a branding or a package design or a messaging or future comms perspective, but this too should also help you make better business decisions. So if you have an opportunity to maybe go into a product line or whatever the opportunity might be in front of the brand, by running it through the brand platform, you can then make a better decision of, does this align with who we are as a brand, or does this begin to maybe dilute us a little bit where we're not really being true to who we are?
Yeah, that's true. It's a great gut check. So as you bring someone on, let's say, like there's a lot of uses for the brand platform. It's a great way to level set with your existing employees. If you're bringing on a new person, you can get them up to speed. So there's efficiencies here in having this all kind of condensed into one document. If you partner with an agency, let's say you bring on a PR person or you have a new social team, this again is a nice way to kind of get everybody on the same playing field. And then, yeah, like Casey said, it's that gut check for any foundational decisions as you go out and you activate within the world. If you're, running a marketing campaign or you're advertising or any touch point, really, it's good to kind of be able to reflect back on this and say, okay, are we staying true to those core values that we established? Sweet. So now we've done our discovery, we've got our brand platform set, we know who we are. The next phase of the process is really getting into this visual expression of who we are. This slide shows an example of some pathways that we created for our client, Don Chilio. So we created this brand platform where we positioned them as they're a spicy chili based product that is out of Mexico. It's really awesome. These crispy, crunchy chili crisps. And the guys who started it are really fun and vibrant, and they just have this amazing passion for chilies. So we positioned them as the chili experts. And then we wanted to give them the next step in the process is to provide different pathways. So we usually provide, between 3 and 5 different creative visual pathways. And these are they set the tone visually and emotionally. So for how the brand will come to life. So each one of these, you can look at them and they probably will, strike a chord. You can feel kind of how that brand pathway would have an emotional reflection to a consumer, and how you can see how that brand might come to life. So while they all stay very true to the brand platform, you'll see little different subtle nuances, right? In textures, in patterns, in fonts, in colors, and how, those tactile or visual elements might bring the brand to life.
Yeah, I think what's interesting here, just as a side note um, for different, everyone is different, right? Your experience of, have you worked through a creative process like this? Do you understand that these are directional, or is this a little bit kind of out of reach of your normal kind of process? And doing a little introspection and being okay with obviously there's a great deal of trust in this process, something that we honor very, very dearly. Our responsibility is to bring this to life for you, right? With you. And so this is that first step. So sometimes people will start with a creative brief before doing the discovery or the platform, and they'll go right in essentially to start solving package design when the brand isn't yet fully solidified. And so you may solve something in that process, but you may not solve everything or position your brand appropriately to compete for the attention that you're trying to gain. So being open in this process, trusting the people that you're working with, that what they're reflecting back to you then represents the direction that you see the brand going in. So there's this dance of like, well, who's really responsible for this, right? Is it the agency that you're working with? Are they responsible for bringing this to life for you? Of course they are, but you very much are a part of this. And it's okay if some people are like, I don't get this. I don't get the creativity part of it. And if that's kind of the way you're wired, that's okay. But acknowledging that so that you can leave the space for the creative process to unfold for you. This is a nuanced thing that I think is really important for each founder to kind of recognize or understand about themselves before they embark upon this journey.
Very true. All right. And then so this next slide gets into brand identity a little bit. Sometimes people think about brand identity and they think of it just as a logo, but really brand identity and identity is everything brand. It's ultimately, it's a reflection of that platform that we already established in a visual and tactile way. So it's made up of the logo for sure, but also the fonts, the colors, the design elements that all work together to kind of create that vibe and create that feeling. So this is some work that we did for Don Chilio, just so you can start to kind of visualize what we mean by these. But this packaging down here in the corner, this was the original packaging. And then after we had that positioning established, that, you know, that we wanted them to be much more vibrant and really bring to life that expert quality and that boldness, we improved the package design to what you see on top here. And then over here on the right is the bringing the platform truly to life in like a social grid. So you can really start to feel how the vibrancy, you know, it's not just words, it's not just a logo, but the entire package really starts to create that emotional connection. And you can feel the energy in that brand. Down the bottom is an example of what an out-of-home ad might look like. But you can see how it's also consistent. That's a huge piece, is that when we express to the world, we want every touch point, whether it's consumer, whether it's trade, we want there to be consistency, because we want consumers, we want to be sticky in their brains, and make sure that we show up everywhere and they start to remember who we are because we have that consistency.
One thing I'll throw in here on this too is we believe that consumers, they find themselves in your brand. So if there is inconsistency of how we're expressing brand, the consumer then has a difficult time trusting that if they see you one way in store, but they see you a different way on web or social or wherever they find you, that begins to erode their confidence in you as a brand, because they can't find the footing for themselves to then, because we all want those fanatic brand loyal consumers. The more that they find that of themselves in your brand, then they're more likely to be that strong ambassador and post it on social and share with their friends, or have a party and have your products there and happily, because it's really that opportunity for them to express themselves through your brand. All right. So, Sarah, thanks for walking us through all of that. Now, again, this is all of these stages are pretty dense, and I don't want you all to feel like, oh, this is so simple and easy, and now here we go. Now we're going to make it happen. But for the context of this, once we have that identity established, now we apply that consistently, as you you've heard us say, through package design, through your brand book or brand guidelines, through communication guidelines, and then really driving that consistent expression through your website, your social media, your email marketing, your digital ads, your trade show, your sell sheets, so that all trade and consumer touch points, wherever anyone engages with your brand, they're going to find that consistent expression, and again, find themselves or find what they're looking for in your brand so that they can feel good about that. So strong brand, clear personality and message that consumers recognize, understand, and trust, because there's consistency in everything you do. That's really the result that we want to help you all achieve. And then finally, to wrap things up, why is all of this important? So we see this is kind of what keeps us up at night, right? The opportunity cost of delaying this process is that your future design, communication, marketing, ad spend, which is a huge part of this, if it's not hitting the mark, well, then we're potentially jeopardizing those future investments because we're not connecting with our consumer. So again, establishing that strong foundation, you could then put yourself to be more effective and efficient in how you strategize, design, and communicate all things brand. So that aspect of, again, this, I say this with peace and love, if you started your brand, and because we've seen this so much where people are like, I don't have the time, I don't have the money to build my brand correctly. I just need to get a logo and a package design and start selling. And then I will take the revenues of selling my brand and my products. And then eventually I'll do the work to build the foundation of brand. But going back to that statistic of that nearly 75% of all brands fail within 2 years. Again, there's the dynamic of investment maybe is delayed today more than ever in this industry. So how do you, if you have $1 million in sales, well, how do you get to 10 million in sales without those investment dollars? When you have to maybe rehab your brand and package design, or when you have to, or when you understand how much marketing spend that you need to drive this overall awareness of your brand and to impact velocities of sale and sell through and keep yourself on the shelf, right? This is a huge part of why all of this is important to put you all in a better place to win in the long term. So we thank you for taking the time today to listen to all the things we have to say, and we'd love to open it up to any questions that anybody has.
Wonderful. While we're waiting for the questions to come in, Casey, Sarah, thank you very much. Appreciate that presentation. I'm hopeful that we're going to have some questions. I know I have some but I'm gonna hold off a little bit and see if our audience has some before I dig into some of what I have. As far as that goes, I did put the website for Fruition into the chat, so you can check out their website, and certainly Casey and Sarah's contact information is in front of you. Meanwhile, while we're waiting here to see if any questions pop up, I'd like to remind you, we do a masterclass that's free monthly. We're working on scheduling April, and more than likely, the topic we'll be talking about is freight. And how that pertains to your profitability, what options you have, and things like that. So more information to come on that in our email, and we look forward to sharing that with you and talking about that next month. Okay, well, we're waiting for some questions. Why don't I get started, because I know I have a few. So one of the things I want to talk about, and looking at talking about packaging and rebranding and things like that. What tips would you have for someone that's looking to do that? And then I guess second to that is, I'm kind of curious as to, how do you know when the right time is for a rebrand? Meaning, okay, I'm out there, and maybe it's been, we've talked about the 75% in the first 2 years. Maybe I'm on year 4 or 5, and I'm an established brand. I'm relatively successful. How do I know when to rebrand? So what kind of tips relative to that would you share with the audience?
Yeah, great question. I think often people will wait until the market tells them it's time. And that might mean that a retailer is pulling you off shelf, or a retailer is challenging you, right, to say your velocities aren't hitting the mark. Ideally, it's before that happens. So we like to think about it as, or I'd like to share with everybody of that the tension is amazing. And when the tension is harnessed properly, then we can uncover opportunities. So as we talk about the brand platform, and that's alive, right? We want it to be solid. We want it to stay as it is until we need to evolve it, right? So this is a very fine line of when do we evolve what's happening. So I would say if competition is entering into the space and they begin to maybe, if say you were the initial, you were the kind of the category leader, or you started the category, let's say, and others enter into the category and now they start to steal some of the thunder. Well, I think you could begin to hypothesize that others might join in trying to steal your thunder. And so being aware and kind of being critical of everything while maintaining that consistent expression, I think is a really great place to harness that tension. And then, so say you're going to, maybe your communication, maybe your brand is legit, right? I think if packaging is broken, 9.9 times out of 10, it's probably a brand issue too. But let's say you're in the 0.1% of where it's not a brand issue, and it really is a packaging, it's a communication hierarchy or a wayfinding or a brand blocking issue. Those things can be addressed with some critical thinking and timing that to when your next print run is, right? So in a new print run, you might have to, depending on your print process, you might have to purchase new plates, right? Or can we make changes to the packaging without impacting plate costs? And then you're just in the normal spend of that cycle of the next inventory, kind of upping your inventory the next time that that's needed. So that I would try to align any packaging change, minor or major, to when it's the next time to print, while also keeping in mind those dynamics in the industry.
I love that. And, given my background in category management and, various levels at, at various stops, that was one of the biggest challenges when managing private label packaging is, oftentimes whether we were looking to add a new flavor or, a new SKU, a seasonal SKU or something like that, managing that inventory of existing packaging, oftentimes we were in a position where we had too much inventory. We couldn't think about a redesign. So I love that advice. That's great. And we do have a question here from Viviana. She says, hello, any guidance on how to reconcile the tension between customers who love our brand, packaging, for example, and buyers who are critical? Our brand has problems for sure, but consistently, I get great feedback from customers, but criticism from buyers.
Great question. So that, like, all love and respect to buyers, right? But I think buyers are operating, they have their bosses, they have the needs that they're trying to accomplish in each category that they may be representing. We as a brand, and Viviana is your brand, is you want to maintain that consistent expression, right? And so that tension of what the buyer is telling you, I think we have to internalize that. We have to take it under consideration. And if our loyal customers really truly love the brand and they love the packaging, well, the evolution of your brand and the evolution of your packaging, we should be able to bring them along, right? So the equity that you have with your brand or your products, that is always an undercurrent or a major tension as we do a rebrand or a redesign. Whatever we come up with has to be better than what you have. And when we arrive to that, it becomes crystal clear that the new way forward is clearly a better way. I want to answer the challenges of what that buyer is kind of asking you to achieve, but through the lens of you as your brand, right? I don't want, to me, it's more of a knee-jerk reaction to solve something that the buyer is asking for versus to really anchor that to who you are as a brand. Sarah, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, that's a great perspective that you bring to it. And I do, like, in my mind, it's really about going back to those core tenets of your brand and making sure, that you know who you are, and that's really well established, and then making sure that is being expressed on the brand, are on that PDP and on shelf. Buyers do have a lot of great insight as far as like what's popping on shelf and what's moving, and they know their stores really well. So a lot of time that feedback is really valuable, and consumers don't always look at it quite from the perspective that we do, right? Or a buyer, or the brand, or the package design experts do necessarily. But I think it all kind of starts with knowing your brand really well. And then making sure, like listening to that buyer feedback for sure, because they're the ones that are the gatekeepers, and they let you in the door. And it certainly is important to respect what they're saying. But I think, having that strong foundation and making sure that you're expressing that first and foremost, through influential design is probably is key.
Would you say, and I have some of these discussions, not relative necessarily to packaging, but with regards to the product itself. But I'll relay it back to packaging. But when I'm talking about the product, is it important from a packaging perspective to talk about the size of the prize? Meaning, when I'm talking, and I get feedback from let's just say, and I'm not going to name any specific retailers, but let's say a two-store chain in Timbuktu, and I get that feedback. Maybe the size of the prize in making a change to get into that retailer is one thing, but then I have a 300-400 store chain across national, and I get similar feedback, right? The size of the prize there, if the feedback is prohibitive of getting into the retailer, maybe that bears a little bit more weight. And obviously, taking into consideration, Casey and Sarah, what you shared, with regards to brand identity and whatnot. Do you see that factoring into the decision making process, or is it a bigger picture beyond just the size of the prize?
I think it's probably both, right? So the two-store chain, they may give you really great feedback. That might be the kind of the initial spark of like maybe the issues that you do have with your brand. So I think part of a process that we follow is that it's like any thought is a good thought, any thought or any question is a good question, right? So if the buyer is telling you something that you may disagree with, that's okay. Great. We have a point of tension, and now we have to harness that for the betterment of our brand. Now, if the big retailer says the same thing, well, now that probably validates what's being asked of us. And so that's where I think is the best that we can do as a brand is to really truly capture that authentic expression of ourselves and then drive that through design and communication and have a real clear communication hierarchy and allow people to find their way to and through our brand. And that to me then begins when you present to a buyer and they see that you've got all the ducks in a row. It's real easy for them to see because you not only are representing your brand well, but you're probably competing against X number of other brands with for that buyer's attention. And if that buyer knows that you kind of have your stuff together, well, they can more confidently trust that you're going to be a great partner for them and you're going to help that buyer and that category meet the goals that that buyer has to achieve for their upper management, right? So everything, whether it's going uphill or downhill, we have to take those things into consideration always.
Yeah, and I think I can't remember, Sarah or Casey, which one of you mentioned, an analogy with regards to a baby. I'll often say no one likes being told their baby's ugly, right? And
Yes.
I think it's important we as founders and marketing folks, have some humility with regards to our packaging, and certainly we do take it personal, and realizing that a lot of this feedback is subjective. But to your point, when you look at buyers and people in these roles, they see so many different things on a daily, weekly basis, right? They see so many things at them. So that feedback, well, might be perceived as being subjective. It might be going back to your presentation, thinking about what's on trend and things like that. This is what they're seeing, and this is what,
Yeah,
they're being exposed to. So I think there's a great part of that that comes into it.
for sure. Amen.
Great.
So true. Package
All
design
right. I was
is
going to
hard.
say, go ahead, Sarah.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say it's your hardest working asset, right? It's your consumer facing, it's a one consumer facing piece that you can always rely on. So it's got a lot of heavy lifting to do on the shelf for sure.
Yeah, and I think I don't see another question here, so I'm just gonna keep going because
Yeah.
like I said, I have plenty of questions myself. So I think, when you look at the environment right now, one of the things I hear on a frequent basis is, founders and emerging brands being bootstrapped and capital being obviously at a premium and so many people watching their numbers. One of the questions that comes up with and I don't know that this has a big role in it, but with the advent of AI and the abilities that people do things on their own, one of the questions that I kind of wonder is, can someone do this on their own, or within their team, and or what's the advantage of having someone like yourselves and an agency do the work for you, weighing those pros and cons? What would you say?
Yeah, great question. I think like more minds, more people, more experienced people working collaboratively together will will be better than if you did it alone. So I would start with that. But what if, like, that's great for me to say, but the rubber meets the road and I'm a founder and I don't have the money, Casey. What am I supposed to do with this? Well, this is kind of where, um, could you do this by yourself? Yes. There will be limits to what you can achieve, right? Even with AI, a lot of the AI design, you can tell it's kind of soul, like it may improve in the future, right? But it feels soulless or it feels a little empty. And the nuance of working with really great people who can really amplify the heart of the brand through design and through communication, that comes about because even for us, as we express our, like, as we try to go out into the world and say, hi, everybody, this is who we are, that can be really hard for us to do. And me personally, if I don't want to go pound my chest and say, hey, we're the greatest thing since sliced bread, right? So if someone is a little bit more humble and or you're just so close to it, to get that outside perspective is so critical, right? So where you can gain that outside perspective by engaging with an agency, because there are tons of amazing agencies. And I would like to believe that most of them follow a very similar process to this, where they all know that brand is the most important thing, and then building off of that foundation. So if you're with one of those agencies, I would say you're in great hands. There are freelancers, there's a lot of great people or advisors that can help you with this. And then maybe you're going to take some of the dollars that you have and invest into someone to help you with that upfront strategy. And then maybe you're going to do some more of the stuff on your own. Again, that is a lot of tension to me, because I know that a group or a specialist is going to help you with this far better than you could ever do it yourself.
That makes
Sarah,
a lot of sense.
anything
That
to
makes
add?
a lot.
Yeah, I just think that, sometimes we love that first initial kickoff call that I talked about earlier. And, it's funny, sometimes a little nugget, a little word, a little phrase, a story or something will just spark something for us. And it'll, when we come back and we present to the client, they'll say, oh my gosh, I never really thought about that. And that becomes, a through line in the brand. And that becomes kind of part of the heart and soul. And so to just have somebody else with that alternate perspective, that can help you, see the forest through the trees a little bit, I think is really valuable.
Great.
Great. Great. I know I'm going to read a couple comments before I get to our next question, which is in the chat. Viviana said, I think it's also accepting that not everyone buys into your brand, vision, mission, and purpose in the market and the world. And Brandy Miller, nice to see you, Brandy, from Mochi Love, says, great presentation. And having seen this come to life, I'm really impressed with how it all came together. That brings us to our next question, which is from Wave and Dean Fernandez. He says, how important is packaging design if the product is primarily going to be offered in a D2C online marketplace?
Great question. We see that as really, it's the same dynamic, right? So if you're standing in Kroger and you're in whatever category that you're in, and you're trying to decide, am I going to buy the brand or product that I always buy in this set, or am I going to tempt myself to try something different? We see the same dynamic happening on any sort of e-com platform, whether that's Amazon or any other brand, where the way I think that consumers are still looking for these brands and these products. They're something about the design, something about the reason to believe, or the attributes or qualities of a particular product that same dynamic happens online just as it does in store. So when we now, I should say there are some brands who are amazing direct to consumer brands, and they maybe downplay some of the systems of design that are needed in a retail environment. And then we, I, I think we all know at least of one of these brands that went into retail from D2C and they didn't update their packaging. And I don't believe it went well because nobody knew what it was, right? So I think thinking about it starting in retail but living in the direct to consumer world is the way to go about that process. Um, but sometimes people will start with a very stripped down package just to get it out into the direct to consumer world, and they start building their brand. Awesome. If you're going to go into retail, that's absolutely a time that the packaging should be put under that tension lamp to figure out a different design.
Love it. Love it. I'm going to ask a few more questions, but before I do that, I'm going to put a couple links up in the chat for podcasts. You know, if you're looking for resources, as you know, we're talking today about packaging and branding and things like that. The first link is for our CEO, Luke Abbott's podcast called the Reconnected Podcast, where he talks with people across all avenues of CPG, whether you're a founder, whether you're a buyer, whether you're an investor. I'd encourage you to check that out. And the second one is for something close to my heart, my podcast, which is done live on LinkedIn every Friday at 3 o'clock. It's called CPG Vibes. And we have a variety of guests. Sometimes it's just myself and my co-host, Alex Bear, talking all things CPG. But I encourage you to check both those out for additional resources. And as I mentioned, CPG Vibes is done live on LinkedIn every Friday. If you follow me for you'll be able to see the link for the show and can join us live and chat. And we have interaction going back and forth, much like we're having done today. So one of the things that I don't know that we've touched on yet, but when we're talking about you know, how to choose an agency partner, you know, and how do you find the right partner for your business, you know, and obviously specific to, you know, maybe some points with regards to packaging, branding, like we've talked about today. From a vetting process, what would you, you know, what advice would you give those listening or watching today?
Great question. This is such a personal process that I think that you should have a really good, strong personal feel and connection with the agency that you're going to work with, right? And having some understanding. Again, a lot of people don't know how to manage through this process, or you know, how do you deal with revisions? Well, what if the first round isn't on point? Do you abandon ship, right? Or not? And a lot of this can be like a secret game, right? Someone says one thing and then I tell you and you tell Sarah, and is the same thing communicated through. So there's a learning process that happens, I guess, once you're engaged with the agency, but upfront, because it's so personal, I think you have, whether it's your brand platform or it's just your own heart of what you of connecting with those people that you know are going to not give up on you, and that they're going to stick with you through the great parts of the process. And if it gets a little sticky, if it gets a little like there's the tension has raised, you want to make sure that the people that you're working with aren't going to bail on you or just say, oh, this is too much of a headache here. Take this kind of like subpar design and we're out of budget. Thank you very much. That's not the way we do it. And maybe just connecting with other people in the industry and asking them about what their experience has been like working with those agencies, because there are tons of really great ones to work with, right? And finding the one that fits your budget, fits your time scale, and then is a personal connection with you that you know that they're going to really care for. They're going to be gentle when they tell you that your baby needs a new outfit, and and as your baby grows to maybe being an adolescent, they're going to solve not where you were as a brand, but they're going to solve where you're going as a brand.
Sarah, anything additional from your perspective?
Yes, for sure. I think that chemistry is key because, like Casey said, there are some, you know, we become a little bit familial, I almost feel like, with some of our clients, where sometimes there's tough discussions that have to happen. So I do feel like when you have that chemistry and you have that trust established, that for sure is key. Of course, too, you know, someone who is certainly invested from the beginning, and really is provides that foundational piece too, versus there, there's amazing freelancers out there that can create amazing design, but if it's not grounded, and if you're just kind of chasing butterflies out in the field, you'll be doing, you'll find yourself going back over and over again. So making sure that, you have a partner that's giving that kind of comprehensive solution, and not just a beautiful designer, or just can create wonderful art, but really is being thoughtful about the entire process. And then also, budget, of course, is a consideration. There are agencies that charge crazy amounts, and you get this giant team, and not, it's great for some brands, not necessary for other brands. So those are certainly probably the biggest factors, I think, in
Yeah,
choosing it.
yeah, great points, great points. And I know we're closing in on time. I think I don't see more questions in the chat, so I'm going to ask one last one. I feel like this is Wade education here, but I don't mind. I like this. So I think we talked a little bit about timing, but what I'm curious about, as far as I'm a brand, I have an idea. Maybe I'm working with a co-man and fine tuning the recipe. When is the right time to engage an agency such as yourselves? Like, at what point in the process? Is it at inception, to talk through these purpose and the different points you shared at the beginning? Is it further into the road? Where, how do I start with, talking about, okay, it's time for me to get serious and have a discussion with an agency?
Yeah, great question. We love to get involved really early in that process, especially because this is a really complex question, because there's so many of these things that connect to each other, right? So if I'm going to work with a co-manufacturer, I want to understand what their production line looks like. What kind of equipment do they have, right? What's happening then in the category in terms of what's the dominant packaging form in the category that we're in? Is there an opportunity for us to do something that's disruptive within that category that wouldn't upset the retailer, but that might be really great for how the consumer might engage and use the product? Well, does that solution work on the line that the co-man has, or do we need $1 million capex addition to the line, right? So kind of layering all of those things together. So the sooner you can get an agency involved that really understands branding, and then while the brand is being worked on, help set the table for what the merchandising system might look like, or what is just happening in the industry or in the category, and then aligning those things on which co-man are you choosing, what is that proper package format, right? Are you hot fill? Like, there's so many different things that go into it. And then printing, well, what is that? What's the substrate? What is that print process? How much is all of that going to cost? What design opportunities do we have there? So the sooner that you can get engaged with an agency, that they can begin to help you figure out those things. Again, these are all brand or package design adjacent. But if we don't understand those dynamics and we just design something that doesn't work for the retailer, it doesn't work for the co-man, well, now we've wasted a lot of time and a lot of money, right? And that kind of hiccup is, to us, is not, there's no room or time for that. So as early as possible, but once you know, like, okay, formulation's coming in, I know what I have, that's probably a good time to get started on it, because you're probably going to need at least a month for the discovery. You're going to need maybe 2 to 4 weeks if naming's a bucking bronco, right? Name anything and then go do a trademark search. It's taken. I know it is. That doesn't mean that you can't do naming. It's just naming's hard. So that might be a month. Brand identity might be a month. Package design might be a month, right? So ideally, you are leaving yourself with completing all this work in, say, 3 to 6 months. And if you have, once you have that appointment or the call with a buyer and they're like, how quickly can you be in our DC? And if that's like 2 months out, well, you're way behind the eight ball at that point.
Wow, that's Some points I hadn't thought about. I know that. So thank you for sharing that. Waven, Dean Fernandez, Fruition's a rock store branding agency, and I can share this from personal experience. Aloha, Waven. So
Thank you,
some
Wade.
positive feedback there. And I
For
see
sure.
popped on camera at the top. So we're almost on time. I want to give some space, Casey, Sarah, for some closing remarks or comments with regards to best ways to engage with Fruition and yourselves and to follow up on this conversation.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you again, everybody, for Luke, Sasha, Wade, for having us, and everybody in attendance or who might watch this. We really are passionate about helping you make your way through all of this. So feel free to, well, we're going to send, Sasha will send out an email with this deck. It'll have our contact information. You can go to fruition.com to get in touch with us. And anybody that's here, which you'll see in the email, reach out to us. We would like to offer a free hour session to talk to you about the challenges that you're facing, no strings attached. We're here to help you as needed.
Great. Sarah?
Yeah, just reiterating Casey's gratitude. It's so great to see this so well attended, and it's wonderful to share kind of what we do. So yeah, I would love to chat with any of you about your challenges, your struggles. Again, no strings attached. But yeah, we love to meet people and understand what they're going through and help them if we can.
Yeah, and if we can't, we can connect you to people who can, good people who have similar philosophies and shared principles, right? That they too want to see the industry do better, and they too, their purpose is to help you along your journey as well.
Yeah, and I think that Casey speaks a lot. We talked about vetting. And I know when I'm talking to potential clients, it's one of the things I talk to is, this is what we can do. And if it's something we can't, we probably know somebody that can. So I think it's
Absolutely.
very very great of you to say that, and I think it speaks a lot about you and your organization. So thank you for sharing that. Again, thanks everyone for joining us today. We're on time now, so I hope you join us next month for our next masterclass. Watch your emails and LinkedIn for that. And just thank you both for joining us today. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Wade.
you.
Be well.